Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Andrew, and I'm here to do my breakdown for My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 15. And to dive right into the breakdown, the title of this episode is Tartarus, based off the manga chapter for chapter 297 under the same name. And this episode actually covers two chapters, chapters 297 and 298, pages 4 through 19. And the first thing that needs to be broken down is the monologue at the beginning of this episode, which is pretty much the exact same monologue that we get in the manga of Deku explaining what Tartarus is, a little bit more information about how Tartarus functions, how people actually feel about Tartarus, and just getting more into the mood for what a lot of this episode is going to be about, which is the jailbreak. And from there, we do get the reused scenes that really emphasizes that All For One is planning on breaking himself out of prison while he's inside the body of Tomura Shigaraki. And going from there, I also want to break down the first added scene that we get in this episode that is not in the manga. And that is the scene that really expands on the two heroes of Gyges and Bieros. And when it comes to this scene, we do get a little bit more about these characters, and even though these characters are not going to be in the story for long, I do enjoy the fact that they do add a little bit more for these characters, how they regret that they are at Tartarus and that they couldn't be at the location to help the other heroes, but how they also understand that this is the job that they have to do and that they needed to be there. And something that I would like to add is that the anime does change the time frame for when Tomura Shigaraki arrives to actually break out All For One out of the prison. And in the anime, it takes place around 8 p.m., while in the manga, it takes place at 8:34 p.m., which is not that big of a difference. And with that, we do get a little bit more added scenes of seeing the Nomu actually approaching the gates of the entrance of Tartarus, as it's called the Bronze Gate, as it's revealed a few new additional quirks that the Nomus have and are able to use that are not explicitly stated in the manga. And going a little bit more into this added scene, we do get confirmation that these heroes did die, and we do get to actively see Tomura Shigaraki, or All For One in Tomura's body, kill one of the heroes straight out that we did not get to see in the manga. And after the title drop, we get to see Tomura Shigaraki actually incapacitate and kill the other hero as well. And even during this time, we actually get something that is not necessarily in the manga, which is sort of a moment in the story that is set prior to the 8 p.m. time in the anime, which is set at 7:57 p.m. to add to the scene that what is happening at this moment is happening concurrently. And when it comes to this scene, it really adds to the story of My Hero Academia and how many people in the world view the villains as being non-humans. And adding on to that, we do get something that is changed from the manga to the anime when it comes to showing off some villains that are in Tartarus. And that in the manga, we get revealed on who these villains are and how these are villains that we've actually seen prior to the story, as well as some new villains going to be introduced. But in the anime, what it's done is that we see some of these villains being portrayed on a monitor, as it seems as if the security people are actually monitoring them at that moment, which is a cool way to add this to the anime without being exactly like the manga. And by doing so, there are a few panels that are cut, but one of them is not really of that much importance because it is a red herring in the manga. But another one is also not as big as a deal because of a character being revealed later on in the actual chapter itself, as well as being revealed later on in the actual anime chapter, as well as potentially playing a major role in this arc moving forward. But yeah, from there, we do get some reused scenes to indicate that everything is happening concurrently, where we do see that All For One in Tomura's body begins to raid the Tartarus jail, while we also have the entire jail going on code red. So as we get more into the jailbreak, we do get to see Tartarus begin locking down its actual facilities, as we see it disconnecting from the mainland as well. We get a very important scene from the manga that really shows the dichotomy of what's going on inside of Tomura Shigaraki's body, as Tomura is having a conversation with himself, or more specifically, All For One. and how we get to see that these two characters are not on the best of terms, but that there is some interesting stuff being built into this moment, with All For One trying to take over while also upholding the ideals of Tomoe Shigaraki. As well as there's a comment that he makes in this speech that is actually a callback to a comment that he made early on in the actual series at around chapter 59, when he says that Tomoe Shigaraki is going to be the next me, the next him, the next All For One. So yeah, that is a piece of dialogue that many people have not caught on to, so I'm bringing it up now. I also like to point out a scene that I really do enjoy, and something that I like that the anime is doing when it comes to the quirk of Search. And how I really do enjoy the fact that they are depicting Search as this rainbow coloring in Tomoe Shigaraki or All For One's eyes as he is looking for himself in Tartarus at that moment. But from there, we also get some cool action sequences that are well animated and well acted when Tomura actually lands on the building and decays it, very much like he did in the manga. As well as we get to see that it has caused some damage to his arm, but in comparison to the manga, the damage that we see in the anime is a little bit less severe. And something else that is actually added to the anime but is implied in the manga is that All For One uses an EMP inside of Tomoe Shigaraki's body to cause the cameras to go out and force the people in Tartarus to try to reboot it, but that also gives All For One inside of Tartarus the time to actually perform a similar attack inside of Tartarus that pretty much knocks out all of the power and begins to release the villains. And something interesting that I want to bring up is the difference between how radio waves in this EMP is used in the anime versus the manga, and how the main difference is the color of the lightning and the electricity, where it's more white in the manga but black in the anime. And while we do get some more scenes after this of the villains beginning to escape their actual prisons, we also get a clearer vision of All For One breaking out of his cell using River Stab, as well as we get to see him more up close in comparison to what we saw in the manga. And from there, the entire facility of Tartarus goes on lockdown as we get individuals heading towards the scene to begin to stop the villains. And we do get some slightly added dialogue that is implied in the manga of an individual saying that they are ready for battle, that they need to be armed, and that if the villains in the prison begin to resist, that they are given the A-OK to more or less kill them in that instance. And in the manga, he barely gets that line out, but in the anime, they decide to get the line out completely before he's eventually blown up and killed. And then we get the reintroduction of another major player and another major villain that we've seen, which is Muscular. And I will say that there are some added moments to Muscular's reveal where he kills more people in the anime than what is portrayed in the manga. And this also applies to something else that we're going to see later on with another villain that we've seen prior. But speaking of prior villains, we do get some added scenes that are not in the manga of Stain seeing the destruction and seeing the carnage that is going on and not necessarily associating himself with it. And then continuing from there, we do get some added scenes of some more random villains being confronted by the prison guards here in Tartarus right before Moonfish reappears into this moment and kills not only the villains, but also the prison guards that are in front of him at that moment. And from there, we do get a scene that is in the manga of this female villain that is escaping. And this is also going to be the second appearance of her technically in the anime, because she is heavily shown in the actual opening of My Hero Academia, which means that she's going to be a major player in this arc. But we do not get a lot added to her character in this moment, but there is some stuff added in a single line of dialogue, which hints at her motivation about how the hero society is hopeless at this moment, and how this might be built upon more when her actual proper reveal comes into fruition. But something else to really add to her character is the fact that she helps with the reintroduction of another major villain via Overhaul by allowing him to escape out of his prison cell because he's unable to do so because, you know, he doesn't have any hands. And from here, this is where the first part of this episode begins to come to an end, with All For One talking to himself. And this is where we pretty much break the episode into two parts. The first part being everything for chapter 297, with the Tartarus escaping and the prison break arc. And then the second half really focusing more of the aftermath of what happened after Tartarus and what happened after the war, as it covers the remaining pages of chapter 298. And from here, this is where we start getting into the information that we saw in 298, which is that we get to see All For One breaking other prisoners out of prisons that are outside of Tartarus, and this happens 6 hours after he escapes Tartarus, where in the anime, we do not see the times in which he actually does it in comparison to the times that we are provided with in the manga. But we do keep the time of 5:04 in the anime as it is in the manga, as well as something that is really added to this moment is Spinner's speech, and how it is really added more upon in the anime than it is in the manga, really showing how Spinner feels about this entire situation and how he feels about what's going on with Tomoru Shigaraki at this moment. As we have All For One trying to respond to Spinner in this moment about how he's doing everything more or less in the same vein that Tomoru would have done, we do get a little bit more to All For One responding to Spinner in this moment. And as he does so, we do get a few added scenes and a little bit more added dialogue from All For One in this moment. Which in the manga, he pretty much says that he's respecting Tomoru's wishes and that he's gonna make them come into fruition. But the added dialogue to the added scene also adds how All For One is going to be the greatest demon king that has ever lived and will do so over all existences. And how he says this as it seems as if the sun is rising, with the sky being multiple colors of orange and purple, which looks very beautiful and wonderful and something that My Hero Academia doesn't do frequently. But from there, we're going to be cutting over more to what's happening to the heroes and what happened to the heroes 2 days after what happened with Tartarus and what happened after the war. For starters, we cut to Bakugo waking up, and it's shown from the perspective of him opening his eyes, and how they add a flashback to how Bakugo was stabbed as he begins to remember and show a little bit more concern for Deku, which is not necessarily in the manga. But what is in the manga, as it is in the anime, is the students who are here that are happy for the fact that Bakugo is alive and explaining to him that he is in Central Hospital, which this hospital is going to be playing most likely a major role in the story moving forward from here. So we need to pay attention to why Central Hospital is important more than just being the best hospital most likely in the world of My Hero Academia. And from here, we do get a little bit more reveals for certain characters being alive. We see that Gran Torino is alive, as well as we see that he still has his yellow cape, which is also going to be important in this arc, just wait and see. As well as the fact that we also get confirmed that Aizawa is alive, but he did lose both his right leg as well as his eye. And something I want to add in this moment is that they actually expand on the conversation between Yamada and Aizawa in this moment, and how we really get to see how Yamada feels about this entire situation, about how the heroes gave it their best and still failed, and how the people are reacting to them, and how this led to the death of Midnight. So it's cool that we get a little bit more reflection from Yamada in this moment that is not necessarily in the manga. And speaking of added scenes, we do get an added scene of 3 specific characters, Tokoyami, Jiro, and Kaminari, and how they are reacting to how they are living in a changed world and reacting to the events that happened after the war. So this is something that I knew we were probably going to get a little bit more of, but me personally, I was not seeking it out. But it's still very great that they were able to add this small moment to the episode to really bring up the idea that this is something that is major and happened in the world, and is something that is going to be affecting the students in one way or another. And another thing that is added to the anime that is not in the manga is a crowd shot of irate individuals who are in a way carrying signs that really emphasizes how their world and how hero society has come to the point that they are at and why people are upset. One sign says that your son is a villain, which is most likely referring to Dabi and Endeavor's relationship. The second one is that we want our tax money back, which is very interesting because this is something that really expands upon the world of My Hero Academia and how heroes are pretty much funded by government and how the government is funded by people via taxes, and that it would make sense for people to want their taxes back for something that they perceive to be a failure and that is wasting their money. And the final one is just come out Endeavor. And this is referring to how people want Endeavor to answer for everything that has happened, and they really want to blame someone for what is going on in the world, and they are putting it all on Endeavor. So these added scenes really adds to the story of My Hero Academia and really adds to the aftermath and how this event has actually affected the world of My Hero Academia. And speaking of, and if we go back and talk a little bit more about the students, we do get to see certain individuals trying to comfort Todoroki in this moment after the reveal of what is going on with Dabi and Endeavor. And we do not get this scene expanded upon, unfortunately, but there is something that I really want to bring up. And it's the moment between Momo as well as Jiro, and this is something that I'm a little bit disappointed about, because the anime really doesn't capture the emotions that was felt in the manga when it comes to Mina crying and the implication that she's been crying the entire time, and Momo trying to put on a brave face, and she's trying to be someone who is comforting everyone as she has bags under her eyes. They don't translate it as well to the anime as stated in the manga, but I still think that they did a very decent job when it comes to the interactions that these characters have with Todoroki. And speaking of Todoroki, we do get to see a little bit more of the expanded scene of Endeavor going through surgery that is seen in the manga, but we get to see a little bit more of it in the anime. And as we see that the episode is beginning to come to an end, we pretty much end up this entire moment with Todoroki really reflecting on what's going on with his entire situation and how he's very much like his brother when it comes to his relationship with Endeavor, and how the anime decides to emphasize this point by flashing back to the sports festival and adding this moment of the flashback that is not seen in the manga, even though the manga did have flashbacks to moments prior in the series. But going from there, we do get it revealed that Shoto's big brother and sister are there to see him, as well as a potential new individual that is going to be there as well, but we do not see their face, but you can probably guess who it is. As the episode ends off with seeing these characters trying to restrain Bakugo to the best of their ability, as Bakugo is showing his version of concern for Deku, who at this moment is revealed is in a coma and is not waking up anytime soon as the episode ends. But yeah, this is pretty much my breakdown for this episode of My Hero Academia, and I think that this episode did a very fantastic job adapting the material that we saw in the manga. And this is pretty much setting the pace for what the next few episodes are going to be, which is most likely we're going to be covering a few chapters per episode, but we're going to get a fair amount of additions to those moments that is really going to be adding to the story and adding to the series as a whole, for most likely the better. And really the only cutscenes that we really get in this episode come from two specific characters that are going to be playing roles later on in the war and need to be cut to pretty much restructure the story to fit better for the anime. But yeah, that's all I really have to say. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed this breakdown. What do you think of the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? What was your favorite part? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you liked it. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I upload more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!